Good morning, Gwen.
Good morning, Delsing.
How are you doing today?
Very well. It's Valentine's Day, so
Is
I
it?
think our topic is very appropriate.
That's right. Well, I'm single, so I never remember this date. I don't have to. Um, Today, we're going to talk about your article, Finding Peace in Relationships. Why don't you take it?
Mhm. Yeah, well, that's almost an oxymoron, isn't it? I think I read a quote by Dolly Parton saying, sort of love can be heaven, but it puts you into hell or something. I don't know. So, but I think we've all experienced difficult relationships that we really wanted to work, and so we marshal all our resources after the initial glow has faded, and that always happens. I think someone told me it's between 18 months and 2.5 years that the bloom goes off the rose. Then you're dealing with the real person. Or as Terry Real, the wonderful psychologist, has said, if you don't hate the person you're married to, you're not married. If you don't come to that point where you're really dealing with, the whole spectrum of your emotions,
Yeah.
then you're still in the honeymoon stage of, this kind of idealistic projection. So, really, the gist of this article is really about, well, what happens when the bloom is off the rose? And here we are faced with the person in all their, warts and foibles and all the things that we're beginning to now notice because the gauze of the enchantment has faded, right? Has kind of thinned out.
Right.
And so what do we do then? And I think this is a crossroads we all get to in relationships where we start to go, man, I really don't like how this person is doing this. Maybe I can communicate with them and they can change that so I can feel better. And I think we all do this all the time, not just in love relationships, but all kinds of conditional relationships where we bring out all these conditions and we think, well, if I can just get these conditions met, then I'm going to be feeling so much better. And of course, if you're on the receiving end of that, you know how it feels. Ursula Le Guin was this wonderful science fiction writer. She lived in Portland, and she wrote a book called Lavinia about a woman in old Grecian times. And when I was reading this book, I decided to just open it to one page and see what was there, right?
Hmm.
And this sentence jumped out at me. It was, women are put on earth to change men, and men are put on earth to resist them. Well, that's totally a paraphrase. But I thought, oh no, is that true? um, and I don't want to talk about conventional love relationships because, as we all know, they can be anything with anyone, and they're all beautiful and they're all true expressions of relational love. But it did give me pause, to think about the part that I think I registered with was wanting to fix, and what a deep impulse that is in me, and I believe that has something to do with being a mom and raising a child who was happened to be a boy. And so there's always that sort of shadow, I think, in the male psyche of mom's trying to get me to do things, and maybe I don't want to do them, so I better resist. And I don't want to go into the psychology of that because that's a book, I think. Um, but the idea of all the ways that we just feel as if we could just explain something to somebody, then they would get it, then they would change, and everything would be okay. And of course, what ends up happening is anyone who is approached with that attitude is going to defend themselves. They're going to dig their heels in. They're going to go, well, I'm not changing because you're saying this is something I need to change. So we come to a kind of a place of mutuality where there has to be some inner reflection. What am I really lacking in this relationship that I think this person is withholding from me or somehow isn't seeing that they can give to me. And and then to just turn that lens on oneself and say, what am I not giving myself that I'm expecting this person to provide for me? And I think that's the key. That's where the key goes in the lock and turns the lock, when we begin to understand that we can't affect change in another person directly. But when we adjust our own attitude, do something a little differently, it opens up the space in the relationship for them to do something differently. Instead of being demanding about it and not expecting. This is the thing, you can't like make an adjustment in yourself and then expect everything else supposed to reflect that adjustment, because it doesn't work that way. It it can in a process, but it has to be accompanied with a non-attachment, an attitude of non-attachment of what happens in the world when I change my behavior. And of course, a lot of that has to do with, now I've cleaned my lenses. Now I'm seeing things maybe more clearly, more as they really are. Maybe I'm responding more genuinely to things as they really are. And this doesn't mean that we can't stand up for ourselves and say, I don't like this, this is wrong. But the way we do it, if we really want to be heard, it requires an owning of my part in what is happening. So that was a lot to start this
That's
discussion.
great. That's great. It's interesting, you and I being siblings, you being my big sister, you were the firstborn, I was the last. So those elements play in our dynamic too. I know, I'm a 60-year-old boy, and I think too, one of the interesting things about our dynamic, just to kind of reverse engineer other dynamics, is that our whole intention of coming together is around coaching, is around consciousness, exploration, and depth. And when you step into that realm, you step in so intentionally, so consciously. So for the hour or two that we speak in a session, we bring our full attention to that. But I think it's very difficult to be in a relationship where you wake up and they're there, and you go to sleep and they're there, and you're trying to bring your conscious presence to it because it needs it. And yet there's the default kind of settings that we have around relationship. Okay, well, they're my partner now, so they're expected to do this, do that, fulfill all my needs. Yeah.
And we may even have made those promises
Mm-hmm.
and intended to fulfill those promises. And I think that makes things very difficult. I remember when I got married, um, we each made our own vows, and it was interesting because my husband came with a very idealistic and beautiful and poetic set of statements that he was making that were really very touched my heart very deeply. But I found my response was, "Wait a minute, wait a minute. I can only promise to do my best," and that was all I could say. And I hope it works out. That was really all I could actually put on the line and say I could do. And
Mm-hmm.
it was very surprising to me that this was the most truthful statement I could make at that time. And I
Mm-hmm.
really stood by it, I think, in many ways. But excuse me. But I think any relationship is grounds for learning. It's school. It's
Mm-hmm.
life school. And if you think it's something else, if it's like a finished product or it's something that has all of these predetermined things already set into it, you're going to be disappointed, because if we come to a relationship with the expectation that it's going to complete us, Jerry Maguire, then we're going to be really blowing smoke up our own skirt. I mean, it's just not true. It's not true. And we can be bitter and disappointed and point our finger at the other person and blame them for not being who we wanted them to be. But ultimately, it's not going to change us. It's not going to make our next relationship, if we abandon this one, any better because
Mm,
we're bringing all that baggage with us.
yeah.
So, yeah. So what's the solution? What do we have? What do we do in this situation? Well, first of all, I, I would I would think that the best attitude to bring into any relationship is it's a learning process. And you dreamed this situation up, this person up, in order to reflect back to you what you really need to work on. This has been my experience.
Mhm.
That any change that I want to bring about in the relationship has to come within me first, or just nothing moves and everyone gets frustrated.
Yeah.
So, and how do we do that? Well, essentially, we work on ourselves. And that is something that we specialize in actually at Coach 2, because we've had to do it for ourselves to make sense of our own lives and relationships and
Mhm.
gain the fulfillment that we came here to have.
Yeah. Yeah. We're married to ourselves till
Yeah.
till
So,
death does do us not part.
yeah,
Yeah.
that reminds me of Miley Cyrus's song. Yeah. I can buy myself flowers.
Yeah. Take
Yes.
myself dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really does start there. It's
Mm,
self-acceptance. We're talking about finding peace in relationships is about self-acceptance. It seems like a kind of a contradiction,
mhm,
but in fact, if you think about your relationship as a practicing ground for self-acceptance, first I'm going to accept myself for how I'm feeling right now about what's going on.
mhm,
And I'm not going to try to change that. I'm going to just accept myself in the fullness of who I am, all the things I don't like about myself, all the things this relationship is reflecting back to me that I wish I could do better or knew more, all the things that come up when I'm in relationship with this person. These are the things I have to make room for in the tent of my personality structure and appreciate and, dare
mhm,
I say, love.
mhm,
Give unconditional love to myself. And when I do that, when I really dig down and I really do that with all the fullness of my own heart, I can't look at another person and judge them and despise them or blame them for anything, really.
mhm,
Then I can open a channel of communication that can be much more clear, where I can say, well, this is hitting me this way. I'm really feeling this. Is that resonating with you? Or does that make any sense to you? Or can you respond to that and let me know how you feel about what I just said? And these kinds of conversations can really open things up. They can even open up issues that were sitting there dormant or in under the surface for years and years and decades. We can still heal from those old hurts and old things that we hold against the other person or against
mhm.
ourselves.
Yeah, I was engaged and married for almost 20 years, and it's been almost that amount of time since since we separated. And last summer, I invited her for a walk on the beach, and I was surprised after all the kind of different elements, the negative elements, kind of washed away, if you will, that I could see very clearly why we were together. And that was refreshing to see because oftentimes, if you do go through a divorce, it's like goodbye, you know. And I think that there is this element of partnership being the key word. That you both have a room which you live in, metaphorically, and you step into this shared room, this shared space, and it's a space you're both creating together, that allows you to be present with another person, but you don't remove yourself. You don't disappear in that room. you own that space, that shared space, and so I think that co-creation element is what I translate. You're talking about. You're stepping in with reverence and intention to create something in that shared space that serves both of you. Yeah.
Well, we all have a deep longing for love. Each of us does, and we want to give it too.
Mhm.
Mm. I always remember this American mystic Lester Levinson, who talked about um, how he only felt really whole within himself when he was giving love, not necessarily receiving, but giving. And I
Mm.
always thought that that was so profound because we, sort of, it seems counterintuitive. Well, if I'm giving something, then, why is that good? If I'm not getting it back.
Yeah.
But in fact, it is giving back to yourself. When you're giving love to someone else, you're feeling it. You're feeling it in your heart center. You're feeling it in your whole system. And it's a balm. It's a healing balm. It's,
Mm.
love is the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
We could go on and on.
Of course we could. And we are.
This particular subject. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, Gwen.
You're welcome.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.